Hello everybody, it's Mark Bloomhard here, founder and CEO of Boulder & Co. Creative Studios, and we are a full service branding agency. Basically what we do is we go into organizations that need a marketing company. Now, I'm not saying if you've got a marketing director, don't call us. In fact, we work very well with marketing directors, but we come in from a very high level, from a strategy perspective. We think about the brand. I've got a PhD in branding, which I'm not really sure how many people have a PhD in branding in America. And then what we do is we don't just stay with the strategy, but we go into the tactics as well. So we employ all the marketing channels that you would need. So we do websites, drones, videos, search engine optimization, corporate newsletters, full print service like business cards, I think I said websites, but we do all of that. And the topic today, I want to talk about when organizations should consider rebranding. So if you're an organization, let's say you're a leader of an organization, you're just kind of wondering if you need to go through the effort of rebranding, this episode is for you. And this episode is actually targeted to a CEO or somebody at a kind of a leadership level that's wondering if their organization could benefit from a rebranding exercise, okay? That's a lot of people are wondering that. They know the name, they hear the term, but is their business ready for a rebrand? This episode is for you. And there's basically 3 times that you would really want to deeply consider rebranding. The first one is if you went through any M&A, any merger or acquisition. So if you purchased a company that had similar services as yourself, or you were purchased by a company, or you merged. And because of that merger, there needs to be like this kind of an education process to your current clientele and also potential clientele of who you are. You're still the same person, where you were, where you are, and where you're going. So if you ever went through that process, and that's painful in itself, that's a really good time to pull in a rebranding expert. And so I just kind of want to talk about rebranding. Many times, most of the time, actually all the time when we come in, we don't rebrand. I hate that term, right? What we do is we find out exactly what I was just saying. Who are you? Where were you from? Where are you? And where are you going? So this rebranding, it's not like we're throwing a grenade into the organization and coming up with something completely new. We're actually illustrating, we're finding out, we use a process called appreciative inquiry. And we're trying to find out what's so special about your organization and what gives it the foundation it has. And that really is the brand, and the rebranding is just articulating it in a way that makes sense to your constituents, to your shareholders, to your potential and current clients. So that's the first thing. If you went through any M&A, any merger and acquisition, I would say it's a really good chance you probably need to have a rebrand. The second thing is I'm looking at my notes just so I stay on cue. The second one is that you just feel like you're no longer really relevant. Your brand or your organization has gotten a little bit older and it kind of got stale. Yeah, and that happens quite a bit. That's probably about, I don't know, the majority of our clients. They just got a little bit stale. Now, the intention is that the organizations keep evolving and they stay current and they stay with their demographic, their targeted demographic, but that's actually quite difficult to do, especially if you're in the weeds every day. And many times you don't see the forest because of the trees. And that's why you have to bring in an outside consultant to be like, you know what, I feel like we're just kind of missing our targeted demographic. Can you help us reconnect with them? And you see this quite a bit. Many times if you look at evolution, if you Google evolution of a logo, you'll see how Apple changed their logo, or so many other corporations, they kind of tweak their logos on and on and on over the time just to stay relevant. So that's a time that you want to call us in. And then the third thing is I call it the gutsy move. So a lot of times it's not that you're staying relevant with your demographic, but the landscape of your industry has changed so much that now you really need to make a gutsy move. And you see this quite a bit as well, right? So the second one was being relevant. So it's more an internal conflict, that you're having a hard time understanding and staying close to your consumer. It's all about the consumer, right? The third one is your consumer has left. Like, this consumer's no longer interested in you. They've kind of moved on. So you see these trends, and that's what's so incredible about this industry. You see these trends in housing, for example. The younger generation really doesn't want the big house and the white picket fence. We live in this really old house, 1821 kind of house. We're fixing it up all the time. Our kids don't want it. Like, that was our dream, right? So we wanted the big old house that we spent every dollar on and every minute fixing it up. Our kids are just like pretty much all the other kids in the world, and they're like, screw that. We want a van that we fix up, or we want a tiny house, or we want a container house, or we don't want a house. We just want to travel, So those are trends. So you can see that these people are actually leaving, so that's an external thing. So at that point, what you need to do, a lot of times it helps to bring in a consultant to be like, okay, what are we missing? Where are these people going? We know that we serve this place in time and in the world, but where is it? Can you help us out? And so many times that's called a gutsy move. And when we work with organizations, we work with them and say, do you want a evolutionary approach or a revolutionary approach? And there's a reason that we had to have a revolutionary war. We had to start all over again. So in evolution, it's kind of the second one. It's kind of internal. You're kind of moving along, trying to find out who you are. The third one that I'm talking about is this gutsy move. It's a revolution. Let's figure out who you are and let's just get there. And you see really exciting examples quite a bit. If you look at restoration hardware, some of my research was done on restoration hardware. And kind of in the Great Recession of 2007, 2008, they were hit with the woes and the fears of pretty much every other company out there. Their competition was Pier 1, Pottery Barn, and so restoration hardware, what they said was, we're going to make a gutsy move. And we're not going to stay in this spot all the time because there's a lot of competition in this stratosphere. So their gutsy move was to move upstream. And so they invested in better processes. They invested in much higher-end furniture. And instead of staying here, their gutsy move was to take that slow time and actually launch it into something that would serve the fast times. And it's paid off. So the company's still around. The CEO, his name is Gary Friedman. I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's a very, very creative, great leader, visionary, has seen where the industry has gone, taken his company to meet it. So that is the three reasons that somebody would consider rebranding. One is that they're no longer relevant. Two, merger and acquisition. Three, it's more external. They got to figure out who their demographic is. And so many times I talk about stocks and I talk about public companies, but so many times what you'll see is that they'll have a leader that just doesn't get it anymore, right? And that they kind of fall into, the first category or the third category. They just really kind of don't get it. And many times, it's kind of exciting to see this, many times you're going to have to get that founder to come back and kind of save the day. And you see this in Starbucks, for example. Starbucks was kind of getting a little bit sleepy and a little bit slow, and they were kind of losing connection with their consumer group, and their consumer group was kind of moving on. There's a large constituents of coffee drinkers that don't want a Starbucks, but they kind of still want a coffee shop, but they prefer to have an independent coffee shop. So those consumer groups are kind of moving on to bigger and better places. And so what they had to do was actually bring the founder back in, Howard Schultz, and Howard Schultz kind of brought the culture back to what the glory days was. Finding out where the consumer was, where they're going, trying to meet them, coming up with little independent shops. So yeah, they're Starbucks owned, but they're independent and nobody really knows it. So those are the three times that you would consider rebranding. And like I said, this is what we do. This is our wheelhouse. This is what we're incredibly passionate about. So if you have any questions, then definitely reach out, call me. And if you want to have us to do kind of evaluation of your brand and kind of where it's at, we do that as well. So obviously free of charge. So, just give us a shout and we'll take it from there. We'd love to work with you.